The race is on. A highly anticipated and fiercely contested federal election campaign kicks off. From Rideau Hall, I'm Mercedes Stevenson with a special edition of the West Block.
The writ will spark what promises to be a fast and furious race to the finish. Our reporter panel looks ahead to what's expected. That's in less than a minute. And which angles of attack could we see from the parties? We get the inside party take.
It's Writ Day, the first day of the federal election campaign actually kicking off when the leaders formalize those campaign plans. We're here at Rideau Hall, where Prime Minister Mark Carney, who will become Liberal leader Mark Carney today, heads into Rideau Hall to ask the Governor General to dissolve Parliament, squeaking in just one day ahead of when Parliament was scheduled to return from being prorogued. Here to talk about what we can expect from the campaign is our chief political correspondent, David Aiken, and the Toronto Star's bureau chief, Tonda McCharles. This is really expected to be a unique campaign, and let's get into that in just a moment. But David, I wanted to ask you first. You are our numbers guru. I know you've been watching the polls closely. Things have been changing and moving. What do we know about who Canadians prefer right now to be Prime Minister and who they're most likely to vote for?
First number, -8 degrees right now. That's why we're all bundled up, where it's really cold out. Let's take a look. I want to show a graphic, first of all. Ipsos, our polling partner, asked Canadians recently, who do you think would make the best Prime Minister? And right now, I think this is going to be one of the ballot questions, leadership. It's pretty clear. 42% of those surveyed, Mark Carney is the best Prime Minister, Pierre Poilievre, 32%, and Jagmeet Singh at 12%. And that then translates into the ballot question. Who would you support right now? This is mind-boggling, knowing where we were a month ago. 42% Liberals, 36% Conservatives, 10% NDP. Remember, the Liberals won the most seats in the last two elections and lost the popular vote. Now they're 6 points up. That is a majority territory. That's where the Liberals start. For Liberals now, it's going to be expectations. Can you maintain the momentum? And the Conservatives throw everything at them. A new ad is debuted to everything at Mark Carney. They've got a documentary out today saying Mark Carney apparently was an evil corporate chieftain that caused harm to whatever. I don't know. And anyways, but you see the strategy there. They've got to make that first number, make Carney less popular.
Tonda, talk to me about how we got here. This was supposed to be the Tory landslide, the easy election for Pierre Poilievre. What changed?
I mean, everything changed January 6th when Justin Trudeau finally reversed his vow to stay on and say, no, I'm out. He realized that he couldn't fight the internal battles and fight what was obviously still going to be a loss of confidence in the House of Commons. They were going to go down one way or the other, and he didn't have his party behind him. Everything changed as of that point, because when the leadership race got underway, even among Liberals, they saw Mark Carney as the better foil for Pierre Poilievre and Donald Trump. So really in 2 months we've seen a tsunami of change in the popular opinion polls. And one thing I would say, though, those are super interesting numbers, but I think that the Conservative vote, the support for Pierre Poilievre remains strong and solid, whereas the Liberals are a little bit more fluid. And when you dive into all of the polling numbers and track really what's going on in voters' minds, more of the Liberal vote that's come Carney's way now and maybe away from the Conservatives and the NDP, those people are still fluid, somewhat soft, I would say. So it's still, you know, it is a horse race. Those look like the Liberals got it nailed, but they don't have it nailed yet.
No.
10 years of Liberals is a long time, so that's where Poilievre will push the pain points on. You've seen these guys before, you know what they do, and they can't be trusted.
And just to pick up on that, Tony, you're absolutely right. Those Liberal numbers are soft. Every pollster I've talked to says so. Why are they soft? Because they're mostly New Democrats, and in Quebec, a lot of Bloc Québécois support. Despite Mark Carney's difficulty speaking French,
So
Bloc Québécois are ready to support him. So that's the softness. But here's I think the Bloc is still going to come back with, you know, roughly the same number of MPs they have, maybe a few less. But the NDP right now, this is a serious problem. Those numbers right now, you could have 5, 6, 8 New Democrats. They won't have party status. So for Jagmeet Singh, forget about being the Prime Minister. You are saving furniture and trying to be party status. And if they start pulling those numbers back from the Liberals, then that spells trouble for Carney.
And I'm always interested, too, on those conservative numbers, because often conservatives don't show up accurately with pollsters. People may not say. We saw it in the U.S. election with Donald Trump. We've
in the
seen it here with
Ontario election,
conservatives
we
before.
underestimated.
And it tends to be an underestimation versus an overestimation. Tonda, one of the really interesting things about this particular election is it's really two untested leaders. Pierre Poilievre has been in politics since right after university, but he's never tried to lead a party in an election.
That's right.
Mark Carney became a politician a couple of weeks ago. How do you envision this playing out? What are the challenges? I mean, I guess at least they're kind of on equal ground to some degree. Neither of them have really done this before, although Pierre Poilievre would have more experience on sort of the political game than Mark Carney.
I mean, in an odd way, Mark Carney is leading an incumbent government, and yet he's a challenger. He's the one challenging the massive lead of the lifelong politician, Pierre Poilievre, who has had up to now a solid ground to stand on. And I think that, you know, if anything, I think this leadership, this election campaign is going to be that. One pollster I spoke to sees it as a character test as much as anything. We'll all debate policy. All of the parties will roll out policy every day. But fundamentally, this pollster saw that voters will be testing the leadership qualities, the management style, the ability to take on Trump and the annexation threat. That's going to be a huge factor.
Mark Carney chose the shortest possible election. May we all thank him for those of us who are covering it. But 36 days is the minimum. Did you think that was a deliberate choice to minimize his exposure? What do you think that was about?
If they could have had a 2-week election, we would have had a 2-week election. I mean, they are looking at these numbers the same as us and going, please let this momentum hold. So they're trying to get us all to the polls as quickly as possible. Now, I mean, in the back rooms, the Conservatives have had a campaign director for 2 years essentially. Poilievre has been in campaign mode for 2 years. They have identified vote. They've got their database set. The guy who's running the Liberal war room, Andrew Bevin, he just found out who his leader was going to be. They still have a lot of candidates they have to get. It's going to be really, like, there's basics about an election. You got to have candidates. You got to find your vote and get it to vote, advance vote. The Conservatives, I think, have an advantage on that in a big way.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to see a little bit of disarray in the Liberal ranks for a while. They don't have all the candidates they need in place. And, some of those tensions, even at local riding levels, are already starting to play out. They're having to slam candidates in fast, and people are objecting, oh, well, we need a nomination process. Hey, we're past that.
Yeah, I was at a...
Well, think of
Mark
Carney's own riding. Mark Carney yesterday was
out.
appointed in the riding in Nepean the day after the party kicked out the MP who'd won 3 elections. That's Chandra area.
And who had been a challenger in the leadership.
That's a great example of how, you're running there and you're running there. And
yesterday I was at a Pierre Poilievre event, and there was someone there who, the folks who were sponsoring it was a veteran from the Invictus Games, were saying the candidates here. And then the party got involved and said he's not the candidate, he's the nominee, and he got kicked out because he can't be there.
Yeah.
And I'm going, oh my gosh, it's the day before the election. And not that, the Conservatives are going to win Ottawa Centre anytime soon. But it still was just telling to how quickly people are having to get their act together. This is also a really unique election in terms of what we're talking about. So 2 things Canadians typically do not vote on: foreign policy and defense policy.
Exactly.
Those are big topics of this election. The last time we had sort of a single issue election, and one that was not about domestic, I mean, obviously our sovereignty to some degree is domestic, was the free trade election. Late 1980s. Like, I barely remember this. And tell us, what does an election that's about that look like, and how is it different from other elections where we're talking about primarily domestic Canadian policies, or Pierre Poilievre, who still wants to fight it on the carbon tax?
Listen, Tony, you and I both closely watched the Ontario election just wrapped up. How did Doug Ford frame that election?
All about Donald Trump.
I think the Liberals federally are looking at how Ford won that, even though everybody in Ontario said healthcare was, I don't like it, and I'm blaming Doug Ford. Nobody voted on healthcare. They voted on affordability and Trump, and Ford was in the sweet spot. That's where the Liberals, I think, are going to go.
And I mean, I think a lot of people are saying that what was a change election as the ballot question is now very much a trust stability election. And the Liberals believe that they can play Mark Carney fit him into any of those questions, that he would be the stable leader, crisis manager, and whatnot. I think that the Conservatives, however, are sticking to the change ballot question, and that Carney represents more of the same. And in the frame of all of that, Donald Trump will poke. He's already taken credit for having shaped the course of this. To a certain extent, he's not wrong. Yeah. He has shaped some of this. He's shaped public opinion. He's shaped, I think, the way the parties and their platforms will come at all of the questions, especially the big economic questions. And guess what? In the middle of this campaign, what's going to play out is a global tariff war. That is going to bring in not just foreign policy, but macroeconomic policy. Suddenly, we're all going to be economic experts.
But just, I mean, let me just also on affordability. Carney's first act, what was it? Get rid of the consumer carbon tax. Check. What's going to happen else in the middle of the campaign? You'll get a check. The consumer carbon rebate is still coming.
The last one.
The last one, and on April 1st, the day before the tariff war starts, gas prices should be dropping 17 cents, and gas companies are on notice. They better be coming down. So that's the affordability, trump card, and I think it's going to be hard for Poilievre is going to still run around saying, no, he's all about carbon taxes, but I don't know a lot of Canadians going to buy that.
Well, I think we'll be keeping a very close eye on how all this plays out. I mean, 5 weeks, as we know, is an eternity in politics, and things in 24 hours on an election campaign can change. Thank you both so much for joining us with your insights on this chilly but exciting day. We'll talk to you as the campaign progresses.
Yeah, thanks, Mercedes.
Thanks, Mercedes.
Up next, we sit down with the partisans to find out what we're expecting from the different parties in terms of their strategies for this election.
Okay.